We've seen the images, soldiers running into the waiting arms of family members, kisses from loved ones, hugs from children.
And for many soldiers, though, it is what happens next that truly changes them. Sarah Snyder introduces us to an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran, 4 tours of duty, 2 Purple Hearts, and 1 story turned melody.
This story is too hard to tell, too painful to go back.
When I left home, there was a lot of things I didn't know.
You have got to let it go, because I lived that world to hold it in, and I lost everything.
So United States Marine veteran Matt Bine put it to music, now performed by local, even nationally renowned artists. Every word, a reminder.
It's kind of like an avenue to vent.
Every melody, a trip back to the place that left him scarred.
You kind of just grow into it as a rhythm.
But in each rhythm, there's healing.
Changed my story into a therapeutic song that would help me, A, take a deep breath, or B, just cry it out because I needed to cry.
His life now, a much different tune. A dad, business owner, and songwriter, Bine says his journey is like many others. Soldiers trying to reintegrate.
We're the greatest fighting force in the entire world. I mean, soon enough with Space Force, maybe even the galaxy. But, so we're trained for everything except for how to come home.
Coming home, for many, the most difficult part of combat.
The training is meant to break you down mentally to be able to prepare you for the toughness ahead.
Bine conquered 4 tours of duty, the first in Iraq in 2005. He was injured, came home, received a Purple Heart, and realized he wanted to go back. His final mission, Afghanistan in 2009, as a Joint Terminal TAC controller.
We control all of the indirect fire on the battlefield, so the airplanes, the naval ships, missiles, even the intelligence aircraft. It's, the JTAC is, you got the firepower of the United States military at your command. We're the southernmost tip of Afghanistan and Helmand, which was, no area to play nicely in.
While on a 3-day patrol, they saw what looked like a family picking corn. He didn't think much of it until a blast.
It was just, a chaotic incident. And I came to, and I was looking up at corn stalks. And I started thinking, oh boy, not again. And when I tried to push myself up, it was just blood coming out of my face. And my nose, my ears, my eyes were, they were tearing so much that they were bleeding.
He was medevaced out.
One of the doctors always kept telling me, he was like, what do you really have to prove anymore? You've done it all. And that's where it's hard to come back and really understand how societies work. It's really hard. It took me literally losing everything I had.
I'm guilty that I'm alive.
For Bine, healing came in the strum of his guitar, telling his story so that over time, he can let go.
You have to let go of it to get better. You have to let go of that memory to become the person that you were meant to be.
Sarah Snyder, ABC 3340 News.
I've got to let it go.
So far, Sarah tells us that he has written 7 songs, mostly country, a little rock and roll. Some are published and even being considered by record labels right now. He says his mission now, though, is helping fellow veterans reintegrate through job fairs and more support groups.
You've probably noticed flags are up across Alabama in preparation for Veterans Day. This week, ABC 3340 is honoring all veterans as they share their voices of war.
Recently, I had a wonderful opportunity to sit down with a 99-year-old Marine who lives by the Marines' motto, Semper Fi, Latin for always faithful. I want you to meet Colonel Carl Cooper of Vestavia Hills.
Everybody was either going to face the draft or enlist, so I enlisted.
Carl Cooper was in his first year of college on a football scholarship when duty called. He enlisted in the Marines. It was 1942. After attending officer candidate school, the young second lieutenant found himself in the Pacific Theater, part of some of the most intense fighting of the war at Guadalcanal and Okinawa.
We had more casualties in the Battle of Okinawa than any other operation. We'd take a load of stuff up, bring a load of people back. Some of them were still living, but most of them had expired.
The colonel says his faith carried him through those days.
Without him, we could be nothing and be nowhere.
He made it home, married his sweetheart, and finished his degree at Howard College, now Samford University. The Coopers moved to Marion, where he taught biology and coached football. He valued education, eventually earning his master's and a doctorate.
For no country boy, that's pretty high cotton.
But the Marines weren't finished with him. He answered the call to the Korean conflict, where he served in artillery and infantry.
We got the greatest country on the earth, and whatever I can do to help keep it that way, that's what I want to do.
Cooper came home again, and this time answered a different calling. In 1959, he became the first principal hired from Mountain Brook Junior High School. His students came to know him as a fair disciplinarian.
If you're going to succeed in anything, you've got to have discipline, regardless of what kind of work you're doing.
Cooper would have stayed on with his students. However, once more, he received a call to duty for his country. During the Vietnam War, he trained and recruited Marines in Washington, D.C. and in California. After Colonel Cooper retired in 1980, he went on to work with FEMA in natural disaster response services. One of his proudest moments came in 2017, when the Alabama legislature honored him with a resolution for his military service and FEMA assistance. Colonel Cooper doesn't talk politics. He does talk love of country, and he is concerned.
We got to install into all of our young people of today the love of our country. We need to do a better job in our schools. We need to start back, and it's teaching more patriotism, patriotic, let them know about our history and how it has survived.
The colonel decided to wear his Marine dress blue uniform for our interview. He thought it appropriate. He doesn't need to wear the uniform, however, to convey what anyone who meets him understands in minutes.
I just love my country. I love what I can do. And if they call today and says, "We need you," I say, "When?"
The colonel turns 100 next March. At the house that he shared with his wife in Vestavia Hills, you'll see a flagpole. It stands in the front yard, and each and every day, the colonel flies the Stars and Stripes and the Marine Corps flag. Semper Fi, Colonel Cooper. Thank you for your service. A Korean War veteran from Birmingham knows what it means to serve. Foster Woodrick was drafted into the Army during a time when the United States was in a race war.
White supremacy in his life proved much harder to defeat. And ABC 3340's Wendell Edwards tells us Foster Woodrick's story, the man who served his country, his community, and isn't finished serving yet.
Every Sunday, without fail, you will find Foster Woodrick here at Mount Moriah Baptist Church in Pratt City.
I'm still serving as best I can.
And the light shineth in darkness.
He used to serve as superintendent of Sunday school, but the truth is, at age 88, he's been serving most of his life.
It was in me, instilled in me by both my mother and father.
He was born in Walker County, grew up in Pratt City. He married his wife in 1947, and then a mere 5 years later, he got the call to serve his country.
I remember that I was notified by mail to report, and that I did. I was sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for training, for basic training.
He was drafted at a time that saw blacks in a whole different war, fighting racism and discrimination. Woodrick still wanted to serve America.
How did you feel representing a country that back home made you less than a man?
Proud,
Still?
proud,
Why?
because I was doing my duty.
He quickly rose in the ranks, promoted from private first class to corporal, from corporal to sergeant, and finally to sergeant first class, leading his platoon.
There was a demilitarized zone there at the 38th parallel. We pulled combat patrols and reconnaissance patrols during that time. I was scared, yes, but I was also resolute in that I was doing my duty.
He served on the front lines, and he saw it all. He saw death and injury. Even now, decades later, he still remembers.
Most of these patrols were at night, and from time to time there were skirmishes with the enemy, North Korean.
His tour of duty lasted 16 months, and then he came home, back to Birmingham, a city at the center of the civil rights movement. He had led a platoon against the Korean enemy, but at home, he couldn't drink from a white water fountain or sit at the front of a city bus.
You were called racial slurs.
I recall, I do,
How did you respond to that?
a smart remark, a stinging rejoinder at times, nothing at times.
He endured the discrimination, knowing he had only one choice.
My mindset was to be the best that I could be at everything that I did so that the world could see that I was at least up to par with its standards.
He worked for the railroad, but ended up working for the city of Birmingham at the jail. Promoted there, too, over the years to lieutenant and eventually assistant jail administrator, serving his city and his community.
I tried to let my work speak for me. I had a feeling that I'm sure most people of my ilk had, and that is that this must end soon.
Foster said it was his faith that carried him his whole life, a faith he still embraces.
Always be faithful, and it will pay off.
A soldier who never surrendered, a man who still stands tall by serving today.
Incredible. Foster Woodrick will turn 89 his next birthday. He says he will continue to work in his church wherever he is needed as long as he can.